Okay, we're back a little bit early because it has been a very long day, and I know that everyone has learned a lot. But if you've been with us since 12 p.m. Eastern, I know that you have had a long day ahead of you. So, for our final panel of the day, last but not least by any means, we'll be joined by some of our experts leading the way for Palace and academic libraries. A wholehearted welcome to James English, Director of Business Development for Palace, Nancy Lynn, Senior Data Projects Strategist at New York University, Rob Cardolano, and Rob, I'm sorry if I butcher this title. It's Associate Vice President for Digital Programs and Technology Services for Columbia University Libraries and Information Services, and Peter Brantley, Director of Online Strategy for the University of California at Davis Library. On to you, James.
All right, hello everyone. My name is James English. I'm the Director of Business Development here in the eBooks and Community Engagement Division of Lyrasis. For those of you who have not worked with me in the past at a local library or a state library, or during my time at NYPL with Simply E, I work with the open source community, groups, content and discovery partners, overseas libraries, and here in the US, my distinct pleasure is with academic libraries who are using Palace as a solution for academic ebook access. In that regard, I work with a group of academic library stakeholders that Michael mentioned earlier, and I have the distinct pleasure of moderating an academic library panel today from some of our thought leaders in that group. Our panelists represent some of the nation's premier academic institutions and research libraries today. They manage and utilize distinctly different platforms from Clarivate to EBSCO and different models of ebook acquisition and authentication systems. Nancy Lynn from New York University, Robert Cardolano from Columbia University, and Peter Brantley from UC Davis um, are comprise our panel today. Our panel session is about 30 minutes, so I will start the conversation by asking a question or two of our panelists so they can each provide their perspective. And at the end, for fun, I want to have at least 5 to 7 minutes of the panel for a lightning round of questions where our panelists can give a one-sentence answer so our attendees have some simple takeaways from their experiences. So to kick it off, I'm going to start with Robert Catalano. The framing for this prompt is really around fragmented user experiences. So, Robert, you've studied, written, and spoken regularly about improving the academic reading experience. You've conveyed how commercial ebook platforms often force students and researchers into multiple portals and inconsistent interfaces, creating friction at the point of access. And also, you've related how rising cost and platform exclusivity often put libraries in a position of paying more for less control over content. My question to you and to the broader panel for discussion is how can libraries reclaim control over the user experience that accessing scholarly content is seamless and intuitive rather than fragmented and confusing? And how can library-driven platforms create sustainable economic models that avoid vendor lock-in and promote content affordability? Rob?
Thanks, James. Thanks, Lyrasis, for hosting today's session. So happy to be here to talk about how we can improve the academic reading experience and how we can work with Lyrasis and Palace team to make that happen. I think, my focus primarily is about academic libraries. So, although I do have some perspectives on public libraries, my main focus here is about academic libraries and research libraries in particular. I think part of the challenge in looking at the user experience is understanding first, who are the users, what are their priorities, and who are the major ebook providers, and how do you measure how you will focus your energy on addressing some of these challenges. So for us, we looked at who are the major ebook providers. I looked at that from a few different perspectives, by the number of titles that we got from ebook providers, by the dollars we spend annually on some of these ebook providers, and by the usage of those providers. And so I would say to reclaim control, to start with, understanding who your top ebook providers are, and look at that experience that is then provided. When we looked at the situation many years ago, what we found was that we had, perhaps looking at the top 10 providers, we had a fragmented, difficult to traverse and use experience, similar to some of the conversations we heard earlier today. Many of these providers provided their own proprietary approach for obtaining the books and for the web reading experience, or they had a mobile app that was somewhat limited, was perhaps using different types of controls that were difficult for users to download and set up and to support. So that fragmented experience not only has an impact on users, but it has an impact on our dollars and our money, because every dollar we spend on these vendor technology platforms, that's overhead that we're not using to build our collections. So we even saw this, and Nancy can talk about this a little bit later, about even open access ebooks. Some of the challenges in getting open access books. You'd think it should be easy to get an open access book, but we had to put additional work to even obtain and provide access to some open access ebooks because of the disparate systems that sometimes open access books are built. So, you know, for us to focus on that academic ebook reading experience is first identify the key vendors that we could work with and some of the key limitations. And at the end of the day, what Palace provided us was a way to approach those vendors with a consolidated reading experience for mobile and tablet users. And really, in the same way that 30 years ago, we worked with web technology for libraries, we see Palace as an open, interoperable approach that can be a standard for ebook reading across all these vendors. And in the same way that libraries adopted web 30 years ago, we want to adopt Palace and work within the community of our library partners, as well as with partners like Lyrasis, who are aligned with our mission and values to deliver that service. The other benefit of working with Lyrasis and kind of focusing on this is really we have to work at scale. We have to work at scale across these large vendors. And Columbia, although we have a pretty large budget, we can't do this alone. We have to work with our academic partners and with partners like Lyrasis and with those ebook providers to reclaim that user experience, provide a more seamless experience. And I can talk further, but I'll stop there and give a chance for the others to keep on.
Yeah, Peter, can you give us some of your thoughts on that from the UC perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me. At the University of California, we a couple of years ago established a work group to try to examine how we could address some of the many short failings that Rob and others have expressed about the very fragmented marketplace and user experiences for ebooks. At the University of California, we have an extraordinarily complicated licensing situation because many of our libraries subscribe to the same set of content, but at the same time, other institutions, individual institutions within the system of 10 campuses might subscribe to their own particular set of licensed materials to meet the needs of their own local communities. So for example, at UC Davis, we are the ag school and the vet med school. So we license content that the rest of the University of California system doesn't acquire. So bringing all of this content together under one umbrella for our users at UC Davis or at any of the other campuses across the system to experience in a seamless way is an extraordinarily difficult problem, both because of the policies and business practices of our vendors, but also because of the technical challenges posed by different types of reading styles and practices, as well as fragmented standards. So when we looked at Palace, we started observing a support for open standards like Open Publication Distribution System or OPDS, support for EPUB, which is a much more readily utilized reading basis for moving the content in front of the user, as well as standardized copy protection when it was called for in LCP. And because of this support for open standards, we at the university could see a vision where we could leverage those basic elemental common solutions to address the inherent complexities of both the vendor and the open marketplaces for ebooks in concert with the complexities of our own institutional system. So for the University of California, we're hopeful that Palace becomes a key solution for some of the challenges that our readers face, whether they're students or scholars or professors.
And Nancy, how about you from NYU? What's the perspective? Y'all have had some different approaches for trying to either consolidate access or simplify user experience.
Yeah, at NYU, well, we started with Simply E, like some of the other folks that spoke earlier from the library side, like public library side, and so I did go to a bunch of the talks today, and I was very inspired and very, I mean, really congratulations to everyone at Lyrasis and all the public libraries, all that you guys have done. I mean, I think there's a lot of overlap in this question of, when someone said now Overdrive knows that they have to integrate with Palace, or another vendor that's part of now the state mandate. And so those are that kind of umbrella idea of, okay, we're purchasing something, we're leasing something, we don't want to be just trapped in what the vendor is offering to us. And so that's an overlap that the public libraries and us, and then what Rob had said earlier about scale. I mean, we have 6 million ebooks with like several hundred platforms, and so that's several hundred overdrives, right? I mean, this is a large effort. However, many of them are large, right? And we have engaged many of the large ones. We've successfully engaged ProQuest, so we have 400,000 titles from ProQuest in our Palace right now, and we have the SSO SAML integration with them, and we'll continue adding more publishers. We've just signed with Taylor and Francis, and they are telling us that by October we have about 200,000 titles with them. And so this is exactly what NYU wanted to happen, which is that if we offer them an easy on-ramp with open standards, protecting the ebooks so that it's not that we're just, putting them without the DRM that they already have on their own sites, that they would come on, and what Michael said earlier about it being a win-win for publishers and libraries. I mean, they're selling to us, we're buying, and the users are using, right? Like, we're one big ecosystem, and we're really beginning to see that they are seeing that there are opportunities for all of us to improve access to ebooks. So that is what NYU is hoping for, and we're seeing right now.
That's exciting to hear, and I'm glad we can support you guys in your efforts. You mentioned something I think that is also a critical component, and I wanted to throw this back at Peter because you'd also talked about it as well. And this is around captive portals and access barriers. So too often, access requires jumping through different authentication hoops, leading to frustration and even abandonment by users. So my question to you and the rest of the panel is, what role should libraries play in shaping authentication and access models to reduce these barriers while preserving security and licensing compliance?
Yeah, at the University of California, each of the campuses has its own local authentication system. So this is another area where we feel that Palace can serve as an extraordinarily helpful mediating solution for our users. So without us at a system-wide level having to force users to invoke any number of potential authentication systems, they can rely on their existing solution and leverage the brokerage function that Palace can provide to provide access to licensed content, which has its own barriers. Now, our barriers from that point on are primarily vendor focused. If they're enforcing different types of reading interactions, or if they try to impose DRM level restrictions on user access, those wind up confusing our users and often at a point where we as system providers can no longer be effective interveners in facilitating a seamless user experience with the reading materials. So having someone who can help us serve as a as a middle layer between our own institutional authentication systems and the provider platforms, which are seeking to impose their own often idiosyncratic rules around access, is really very much of a godsend for us.
Nancy, NYU is recently looking at their authentication systems and going through a transition. Can you speak more to that in the context of this question?
Yeah, we're going into Open Athens. I mean, we're trying to, I think just to add on what Peter was describing, we also have the problem of each of the sites wanting like a user account, right? And so the user account might be attached to the actual app like Adobe Digital Editions or the actual site like eBook Central. And everybody wants eyeballs. Everyone wants to see what people are doing. And I think that Simply E and originally and now Palace, really, really works with the publishers and saying, we're not keeping any of this information. We are, high on privacy. And so I think that the authentication isn't just like, is it SAML? Is it this? Or is it, IP based? It's just, that the publishers are really requiring logins for which we don't want to have the hurdle of having to get another login and then to have to remember that your bookmarks are in one place and then not another. And, simply if you have your bookmarks for 5 different publishers, it'll still be on that one umbrella site. So yeah, I mean, everything we're doing is trying to integrate so that there's fewer. I think I would say that one of the things that we all face is that outside of the library world, there's there's the use Google to log in, use Facebook to log in, right? There's kind of just the trend of not wanting to have different logins and having to remember those. So yeah, we're definitely riding that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a trend for aggregating authentication around certain protocols, but again, it's always that challenge of is there an honest broker in the midst of that? Rob, how's Columbia addressed this challenge?
Yeah, thanks, James. We long ago standardized library services to use our standard authentication that's campus run, and that leverages Shibboleth and now the In-Common Federation work. Working with you, James, and working with Lyrasis, we were able to extend that authentication model to Palace. And really, for us, that's really the only way this could work at scale is to fully integrate with campus authentication, really hide as much of the complexity from our users as possible. And I think that has been achieved. I think that the challenge really here, again, is how to work at scale. In-Common Federation has well over 700 academic libraries. We just, we want to work within the standards that exist out there and not do something that's local and proprietary for Columbia. By working with Lyrasis, we not only got the authentication work, but then you worked again with us to make sure when we added multi-factor authentication, that all worked as well. So the fact that Palace supports multi-factor authentication on campus, it works seamlessly, and that works for us and can work for every institution means it is sustainable over time because it's not something just for Columbia. It really is for the entire community. So having that Palace support really is pretty key for us. And I hope that will help adoption as other academic libraries want to come on board because they can just leverage these existing authentication mechanisms that we're already using.
And I also wanted to add that makes the publishers feel safe, right? They know that Lyrasis is not going to be giving anybody but the campus authenticated access to the titles.
That's a great.
Having Lyrasis as a trusted partner in this, I think, is reassuring for the vendors. We're saying, listen, we want to build this ebook market. We want to work with you to grow the usage of ebooks in a healthy way. And Lyrasis is a trusted partner that's been doing that for decades. This is just one other way in which we can partner with the vendors, the ebook providers, to do that. And Lyrasis is aligned with us in terms of providing the types of security and privacy that we want, but also provide the vendors with the data that they need for compliance with counter and things like that, because the data stays, the books are staying on those servers oftentimes, and that makes life a lot easier for counter compliance.
Now, I'm going to kind of shift from the authentication, but still keep on kind of the things that we regularly work on. And I'm going to lead off with Nancy this time. And it's really around metadata management and standards. So, framing this, I wanted to prompt Nancy, you've spoken passionately at CNI and Code for Live on non-standard metadata and identifiers and how that's led to a broken discovery, duplicate records, and missed opportunities for interoperability. So my question to you is, what would it take for the library community to insist upon an open, standardized metadata and identifier strategy across all the ebook platforms?
Well, I think the problem is universal in our issues with Palace and trying to create a new product with these deficits in our ecosystem is just a microcosm of the bigger problem. And so I think, there's a lot of frustration with the gatekeeping of our shared cooperative cataloging, and IDs not being able to be used in or people being scared or not understanding where and when they can use some of these records and IDs. I think there's, you know, uh, in the big picture, there's a lot of people. I know at NYU we have a license. We use CC0 for any records that we create here at NYU. And we're looking at linked open data initiatives, which then explodes the record into a whole bunch of small identity points. But I think there probably is a service that lyricists or somebody can maybe make on some of the cross walking that you might need to know. And I think if anybody tries to activate any subset of ebooks within any knowledge base, they have hit this problem, right? Like, which books do we own? Which books are going to be in Palace? How do we get the records into our catalog for the ones that we don't have already in our catalog? And so I would say, like, I don't know, like something like 80%, 70% of our time is dealing with metadata and not developing the product. I mean, I wish there was this magic ID, like I own this, I have, I have the rights to give it to Palace. And then 80% of my time was coming up with, all the great marketing things that the public libraries have done and our product development, functionality. And so it's just, I do think there's opportunity to everybody to just keep pushing with the rest of their cataloging staff that this is a bigger problem that everybody has.
Robert, you one time showed me kind of a list of all the different workflows you have to deal with metadata, and then some that weren't even on that list. Can you talk a little bit more from your perspective at Columbia?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you hit it on the head. I think Nancy really described the challenge. We don't have consistency and quality of metadata coming from our ebook providers in a way that they've solved perhaps some of the problems of discovery, perhaps at the title level, maybe at the author level. They don't necessarily have the metadata that supports discovery in an academic setting. And then the other issue we have is we don't get direct link to the digital ebook itself. So a lot of the issue of solving metadata was just providing the content for discovery. But what we're trying to do is provide improved reading experience. So a lot of work we've done with the vendors, and this is where there's all those separate workflows, is trying to stitch together how to get the metadata and the link to the digital resource, the book itself, into the workflow. And we worked with Springer on that, with Lyrasis, and we worked with NYU and their leadership with ProQuest. Taylor and Francis was an interesting one, and we worked on that together. That was for our Taylor and Francis EBA books, about 175,000 books. So each one of these workflows we worked through. I think what really we need to get to, and Peter brought it up earlier, is to have the vendors provide an OPDS data feed that we can then consume and put right into our Palace system, which would then provide, and have enough quality in terms of the descriptive information there, along with the technical information, so that we can seamlessly provide access. We currently have in our Palace system about 300,000 books. And again, working with Lyrasis, we hope to add De Gruyter very soon. And of course, with NYU's leadership, getting Taylor and Francis on board, that should take us about 500,000 books. if we add our EBSCO ebooks, we're hoping to get EBSCO on board, that would take us to about 750,000 books. The only way this can be solved is those vendors are sending us metadata at a certain quality level at scale. And OPDS really is the mechanism that can help do that.
Peter, can you talk more about OPDS and your perspectives and how y'all address this with metadata and standards at UC?
Sure. And I want to pick off on a couple or take off from a couple of things that Nancy and Rob mentioned, which is, in some ways, when we look at the plethora of ID systems for content, and the way that information often doesn't flow very well or very smoothly from one place to another, I think one of the problems is that supply chains don't have points of connection. So in publishing, there's a supply chain that deals with information assignment, modification, usage, and that's oriented toward a point of consumption. It could be a retailer, it could be a distributor, but it often ends there. And then libraries have their own supply chain of information that often comes from cataloging sources and goes into their own local systems, but there's no connection point there. And so we're often at that point of otherwise useful contact, trying to bridge or provide shims between our systems in order to affect user acquisition and utilization of material. And this is one of the reasons that the open publication distribution system originally came into being. It was a way of presenting a list of available content to users in its first instance, and allowing users to see without heavyweight metadata what books are available for them to access and to read, under what conditions, what borrowing terms, and what other issue or what other conditions might shape their borrowing or acquisition, their purchasing experience, because OPDS is neutral to the type of acquisition. So OPDS, as an early standard, has gone through a few revisions to enhance its functionality. It remains a very lightweight mechanism of usefully describing material that can be made available either to users or to other consuming systems. So OPDS can talk from a server to another server or platform to another platform. It can also talk from a platform directly into the hands of the user. And that's why integrators like Palace are able to take OPDS feeds, basically a catalog feed of available books from a publisher or distributor, work with that listing of material, and then ultimately deliver a shaped catalog for a user within an institutional context, within a library context that allows the user to see what's available. So OPDS is one way that we can bridge these universes of information within publishing, within libraries, in a lightweight and parsimonious way. And as we move forward, we're looking to work with NISO and other standards organizations to formalize OPDS so that it can be recognized as a rigorously defined yet flexible standard that's parsimonious and easy for both machines, software, and readers to ultimately work with.
I know it's the end of the day and we have some pretty tech-heavy conversations going on, but I think they're exciting to me in that what we're really talking about is creating an interoperable ecosystem for content, whether that's content discovery or content access by user. And it's really at the heart, it's at these touch points that I think is most exciting to me, because that really does open up the opportunity for libraries to take back control of how they present their collections and content to their users. So on that vein, it's about 4:52. So I am actually going to hop into the lightning round. So, kind of the rules of the round are I'm going to give a prompt and I'm going to turn it to each panel, and I just need a one sentence reply, kind of like your elevator takeaway pitch as an answer. So I'm going to start off with Rob. Fragmented user experience and captive portals. Students shouldn't need 5 logins for one ebook. Every extra portal is a point of failure. How do we make access as simple as click and read?
Simple campus authentication, integrated tightly with mobile devices, meet the vendors where they are with their mobile technologies.
Nancy?
Like we said earlier, insist that the publishers are giving us the opportunity to not only consume on their site.
Peter? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Adoption and flow of open standards like OPDS and LCP and EPUB up and down from the user through the library to the publisher, allowing all of us to participate on an equal and open basis.
All right. Um, next, high cost and vendor lock-in. I'm going to start with Peter this time. So the prompt is, libraries pay more but control less. How do we flip the model to bring libraries back in control?
I think libraries have to organize in order to be able to present a more shared face to publishers and platforms, and understand that by supporting open standards and systems that can provide interfaces to a diversity of content, such as Palace, we're in a strong position to try to reclaim our ability to have greater control over the terms that our users must face to access content.
Rob?
I'm advocating at the New York State level for ebook licensing reform. I think ultimately we need government intervention to provide some consistency in pricing and terms and conditions between the consumer marketplace and the library marketplace. And that's where I'm focusing my attention there. I think ultimately it has to happen at a higher level than at the university level.
Nancy?
We're putting it into our contracts.
Short and simple, you get the A. So let me go one more. Vision for Palace in academic libraries. The prompt is a library community-driven platform. And I'm going to throw it over to Rob. What is your vision and hope for Palace as a community-driven platform for academic libraries?
My vision and hope would be that Palace would be as accepted as Chrome and Safari are for accessing web content, for ebook content for our students and our faculty.
Peter?
We're hoping that Palace can help create a uniform and consistent experience for our readers across both mobile and web interfaces, as well as other interfaces that might arise where people want to read and acquire content.
All right. And Nancy, you get the last word.
Innovation, and we're going to attack ILL one day.
Great. So we have about 4 minutes left. So I'm just going to open it up for the audience, so those that have stuck with us till almost 5, and see if there's any questions you may have of our panelists.
Adam had asked a question about what fraction of ebooks are made available in the Palace app that are EPUB and what fraction are PDFs. I answered it about 75%. How about you, Nancy? What percent are PDF and EPUBs?
Good question. I really don't know, but I can get back to you, Adam.
Okay. And Peter?
A ditto to Nancy. I am not sure, but it's an uncomfortably high percentage of PDFs from my perspective.
Yeah.
All right. Any from our Palace team? Y'all sometimes don't get to interact with this group. We kind of operate off in the shadows sometimes, trying to make things happen with some vendors. But Tara, Jill,
I
Dave?
think I think that's an interesting point about the PDFs because I don't think it's something that we would think about. Most trade publishers that we're working with are offering us EPUB as an option. And if that's not coming from your academic vendors that you're working with, you know, what can we as Palace advocates do for academics in the same vein that we do with trade publishers? So is there anything that we can advocate for on your behalf?
I think accessibility perhaps is the lead there. I think that reflowable and formatable text and the Palace app itself fosters accessibility, and really focusing on that. They can still offer PDF as an option because some faculty and students prefer that. But I think leading with accessibility may be the single greatest place of collaboration and partnership. I think what I was just going to say earlier with high cost and vendor lock, and I had to say one sentence, is making it a win-win-win, a win for the libraries, a win for our users, and a win for the vendors. And I think EPUB can do that.
And I just want to emphasize the accessibility piece that Rob mentioned, and to also note that EPUB provides support for fixed layout. So, you know, if there are faculty or other readers who are concerned about preserving the presentation of a publication, then EPUB is certainly technically competent enough at managing that.
Right. Well, that concludes our panel. So thank you all for attending. And I think, you know, we've been asked a lot about how the academics are using this, and as our thought leaders in this group, thank you very much for sharing your perspectives and your thoughts and your visions for Palace. And I'm going to hand it off to either, does it go to Tara, Jill, or Michael to close us out for the day?
Well, thank you. I'll chime in here to say thank you to the panelists. That was wonderful. Again, I've learned so much throughout the course this entire day. That was great. So we appreciate all of you. We appreciate everyone for attending. And we'd love to hear your feedback. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We have a QR code and a link for people to share their feedback. And I don't know if Jill or Michael have any parting thoughts, but again, we are so grateful. We will send out the slides. We'll send out the recording. And we hope to do this again sometime. So thank you. Thank you once again for attending.
Absolutely. And I just want to say a big thank you to all of our panelists, our team members, and everyone that joined us today. I think we went into this hoping that we kind of lift the veil on what it means to be community driven. And I hope that we all kind of came away with the idea that we are only here having these conversations because of the work that we've all put into building this platform. So it really is a community driven platform, a library driven platform. And I know that the Palace team looks forward to working with y'all.
I don't have a whole lot to add to that, and I know it's getting late for everybody, but I do want to thank everyone who participated today, all the panelists, everyone who was here and listened and learned. I appreciate everything that everyone did. This was wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thanks all. We'll go ahead and sign off for the day.